So this is the April 2018 Ramble video, and
Moving out.
well, to start, I'm gonna show you why I haven't done a lot of videos lately, and that's because I've been playing Battletech. BTech is the new PC game. Um, it's not really. I mean, it's a new game, but it's based on an old franchise. If there are any Battletech fans out there, it's the old FASA BTech, and I do fall under that category. I've been a long time fan of Battletech from the 90s. It started out as a pen and paper game. And then of course there were the classic MechWarrior PC games, and one of the things that one of the additions of the MechWarrior PC games was the notion that it would be kind of fun to play a mercenary commander in the Battletech series. So a lot of games have played around with that, from the MechWarrior, i.e. you're piloting a mech perspective. And this current game has you again as a mercenary commander, but you're no longer technically in the cockpit. You're directing a lance, that's a unit of 4 mechs against varying objectives and things like that. And so I've been playing a lot of that, and hence less time for making videos, but I thought BTech would serve as a nice backdrop to the latest, meaning this month's Ramble. I did notice that last month's Ramble, the graphics weren't so good. Basically, I just filmed my miner doing its thing, and the video quality wasn't so good. So anyway, at least this time we have a nice backdrop of basically this is the combat module of Battletech. Oh, just saved my game, because as if you have played any kind of turn-based games, Civilization, XCOM, you know it's always handy to have a spare save lying around so you can load back if things don't go your way. Although I'm happy to note, truthfully, that I didn't have to load for this particular mission. I am actually thinking of doing a couple of Battletech videos, basically help or geared towards new players to help with tactics and combat. This particular video is interesting because I have a lance. Again, that's a unit of 4 mechs going up against 8 or double its number, so 2 lances of enemy mechs. And generally, the mechs in this particular mission are of high caliber, heavy tonners. So they do provide a lot of tactical challenge. Their number, as well as their location on the map, this mission really had me sweating a lot, trying to figure out how to go about it. You'll notice a mech jumping here. That's the Highlander. Quite agile actually for its jump jets. This ramble won't be about tactical tips in Battletech. I'll save that for another video when this needs to be lost right there. The world of Battletech actually is quite involved, so I thought I'd just ramble on about that, because as I'm a big fan, and I thought there wouldn't be any better thing to ramble on about, at least for April. And you notice that this video is being released in May, but it's the April Ramble, again playing Battletech. Just before I go through a brief history of BTech, I don't know if another point I found interesting was that these kind of videos, like where you have gameplay videos and people are making commentaries on them, or poking fun at them, or basically have a voice overlay over the gameplay, over the game interface. There's some dispute if
Engaging target.
Such use, meaning like what I'm doing now, like taping a voice over the gameplay, if that is sufficient to bring it out of the copyright of the publisher. And the most famous example of this is Nintendo, where Nintendo doesn't like fan videos. I mean, they've gone out of their way to really call the attention of the fans and issue cease and desist orders and takedown notices under DMCA, which is the main copyright law in the states, which governs most of the content on the internet. So on one hand, it's interesting. I mean, yes, the publisher or the developer, let's stick with the example of Nintendo, did come up with the gameplay, but as to the actual things that you do in the video, especially for playthroughs and walkthroughs and other associated videos like that, I mean, it's art, and then it's the player who puts the characters in that position or in that gameplay mechanic. So there is some element of agency there outside of the publisher's directive. And number two, you could argue that coupled with the voiceover is enough to bring it into fair use, or meaning you can use the copyright of somebody else. In this case, the gameplay. Oh, PPC just missed. In this case, the gameplay of a game without getting the permission of the publisher or the developer. Again, most developers don't have a problem with playthroughs and things like that because it's basically free publicity for them. But the big N, Nintendo, and sort of, Nintendo has such a fun reputation as being light and being playful and encouraging players, but it's really taken a hard stance against playthrough videos. And again, it's sort of symptomatic of Nintendo's corporate strategy in general, where they don't really get the internet, or they don't get how to capitalize on its, legions of fans out there who connect and who interact and socialize through the internet. Sure, the Wii had, some kind of internet connectivity thing. I mean, you could log on and you could have a Wii character and it could socialize with others, but Nintendo has sort of lagged behind the other game console makers, Microsoft especially, in terms of engaging and building the tools for an interactive or a fan base that uses the internet to go on about how much they love the product. But I mean, so yes, basically, I mean, Xbox is a good example. It's easy to play online games. It's easy to just hang out in one of the lounges or whatever. I've never heard of any Microsoft game, playthrough of a Microsoft game getting into trouble, whereas Nintendo has use like that all the time. So just something to think about. And I do hope the publishers of BTech don't get on my case for using the gameplay. Because I do quite enjoy the game, and I guess it's free publicity for them. But basically, this new BattleTech game is set in the traditional classic BattleTech universe. That's that's right after, or right, smack in the fourth Succession War. Basically, the fiction behind BattleTech, or the story behind it, is that we've conquered space, and our primary means of going through the stars are jump drives. So they're not warp drives that take a length of time to get you from point A to point B. These are jump drives where you get to point A to point B instantaneously, but because they can't jump too close to a sun or any other gravitational anomaly, they jump in and out at the edge of star systems. So you'll need drop ships to separate from the jump ship to get you to the actual planet or location in system that you want to go. But basically, we've conquered space, and everything's fine for a couple of 100 years. We have the Star League, which is basically one unified government controlling most of the space colonized by humans. There are no aliens, or there is no intelligent alien life in the BattleTech universe. So we just have a bunch of humans running around colonizing, and it's pretty much the golden age. The Star League age is a golden age for mankind. Unfortunately, as these things do usually go, the golden age ends in ruin and flame and regret, as there's a usurper, and he's constantly in the BattleTech universe. Stephen Amarius, the usurper, is constantly compared to Hitler and Genghis Khan and other figures throughout history who have been reviled. Basically, Amarius leads a revolt which succeeds in toppling the ruling family of the Star League. And I think the last name is Cameron. Anyway, the ruling family is deposed, and there isn't anyone strong enough to fill the political vacuum. So the Star League eventually falls, and what's left in its place are, they're called the successor states, or basically there are 4 or 5 primary states that gobble up the Star League, what used to be Star League territory. These successor states are governed by, are also governed by ruling families, and
On my way.
the main political unit in the Battletech universe is Return to Feudalism. So there's very limited
Whatever you
democracy
say, boss.
most of the time. There is a noble class in place. There's an entrenched noble class, and usually the nobles get their way, regardless if they're idiots, if they have no merit, if they have no point being in a Battletech. You have nobles, and it's a return to a feudal time. And the Battletech is the new knight in shining armor. Basically, the pilots are glorified, like in the Tales of Chivalry in medieval Europe. So, a lot of Battletech is a return to that kind of situation where a lot of people have power not because they were elected or not because they earned it, but because they were born into it. And all of the successor states have their respective ruling houses, the ruling elite, noble power. So, again, if you're a fan, you already know this stuff. Like, there's House Davion for the Federated Sons. The Lyran Commonwealth is governed by House Steiner and things like that. So, because everybody can't decide who will lead the Star League, House Kurita is the first one to declare that they will, and all the other houses don't like that. So, this results in basically more than 100 years of combat with Battletechs, with battle mechs and other advanced weaponry. So, because of the length of time of the conflict and its destructive nature, a lot of technology is lost. A lot of things that were common in the Star League are no longer possible in the current day. And I mean current day in the sense that where this game and most of the fiction of Battletech take place, that's around 3020 to 3060 or so. So a lot of tech is, they call it lost tech, meaning, you know, like the cooling, the heat sink, the cooling part of the battle mech was super efficient before, but now I don't know how our ancestors did it. But basically, not just battle mech technology, but different kinds of tech in general, such as agriculture, computer speeds, and things like that. And one interesting aspect of the general decline in technology is that while people are still able to communicate between stars, there's still a radio system in place between star systems. The people who administer that technology, they call themselves Comstar, is actually a quasi-religious organization. So you have people manning radio stations basically, but they don't know how to properly maintain them. So they say a prayer, literally, before sending a message, because they think, you know, the prayer helps transmit the message or things like that.
Solid connection, that one.
So Comstar, as a quasi-religious organization, also plays a lot into the overall story of Battletech. So it's that kind of time, you know, there's feudalism is the name of the game. There's all sorts of hokey superstitions and regret surrounding the old Star League or surrounding the previous Golden Age. And while a lot of houses and citizens of the various houses lament the fall of man, I mean, basically all we're doing is clubbing each other back to the Stone Age in Battletech. None of the great houses are inclined to seek peace. So it's a constant age of warfare, of raids and major battles, and that's why it's gone on. It's reached the fourth succession war. No house basically can gain an advantage over the other.
Targeting
Of
for
course,
Alpha
that's until
Strike.
Hans the Fox Davion, around 25 or so. Hans Davion really, through a combination of politics and skillful military leadership, is able to really expand the territory of his house, of his nation, the Federated Sons. Um, and all of that warfare resulting in civilian casualties and general miserableness of civilian life. I was interested to note, I mean, I was a big Battletech fan growing up. I've read all the novels, but I didn't realize how closely the history parallels the 14th century, basically the 1300s or so in medieval Europe. I was reading an interesting book recently
Minimal
on
damage
that
on
by Barbara Tuchman. I just can't place the title now, but I'll put it in the release notes. But yeah, that book, amazing book on the 14th century. Basically, there were a lot of free companies, meaning mercenaries. Basically, everyone started out as soldiers. So this was also the time of the English and French Hundred Years' War, where basically, just like in BattleTech, England and France were clubbing each other back to the Stone Age. They were sending soldiers without any clear military objective, and the soldiers would win a battle or two and then get stuck behind enemy lines. This usually happened for the British after a military success. They would go around the countryside of France, basically raiding, and then they would find themselves, oh gosh, it's the middle of winter already, and we need to retreat somehow back to our boats or whatever. So it's really an age of 14th century. It's really an age where there was a lot of hopelessness. There was a lot of war just for the sake of war without any clearly defined political or even military objective. It was also an age where the nobility showed just how dumb it is to entrust your fate and your future to someone who is in command, not because of ability, but because of birth. You had a lot of idiot nobles running around in the 14th century. So that book really made me appreciate the similarities between the 14th century and the historical milieu of BattleTech. Just like in BattleTech, in BattleTech there are a lot of mercenary companies. Several famous ones such as the Kellhounds, the Grey Death Legion, of course Wolf's Dragoons. And you wonder, yes, since it's an age of warfare, there are a lot of mercenary companies, but based on history, like again in the 14th century, they all started out as soldiers, and basically the state wasn't strong enough yet or didn't have an economic base sufficient enough to pay soldiers a daily wage or to basically have a regular standing army like what we do now. So the soldiers, after they were recruited and the campaign was over, instead of going back to a life as a serf or as a peasant, they learned on the campaign trail to raid and to steal other people's food and items and whatnot. And really, once you've gotten a taste of that, why settle for anything less? So after the military campaign was up, mostly the soldiers became bandits or mercenaries, and the mercenaries some of them were just as bad or basically were just like bandits. So again, it's in keeping with the history of the Battletech universe, where basically Merc Company is a dime a dozen in the Battletech universe. Everybody employs them. Multiple, the mercenaries have served multiple houses and things like that. So it was just interesting for me as a Battletech fan to see. I'm not sure if the guys behind the fiction in Battletech. Oh gosh, my mech just lost its super rare short-range missile SRM-6. Anyway, I'm not sure if the Battletech guys consciously modeled it after the 14th century. They might have. I'm sure they're pretty smart guys. But that, for me, that was a revelation that the Battletech fiction is very similar to something that's happened in history. So, okay, been going on for 20 minutes. I actually have been seeing a lot of highlights in this video that I'll use for a video to guide new players in tactics. But anyway, so Battletech, super fun series. Basically, it started out as a pen and paper board game, maybe late 80s or early 90s. I did play some of that board game, not a lot, but I did play, which has helped with this current PC game. But a lot of my interest in Battletech really came about from reading the novels from Michael Stackpole and things like that. And they're really sort of like, I'd say pulpy sci-fi, but not like in a bad way. I mean pulpy in a very fun sense. Like, they're exciting, and there's political intrigue, and there are mech battles, and characters
Ready
like
for
Victor
orders.
Steiner Davion and Omi Kurita, Theodore Kurita.
Copy that.
Then of course you have everyone's favorite whipping boy, the Liao, Sanchu Liao. Victor's sister Catherine. So it's really like a soap opera for sci-fi geeks, and I was one growing up. So the Battletech universe, if you're curious to read more about the fiction, I don't know if you can get them on Amazon. The books, they're quite old, but usually the story arcs by Michael Stackpole really flesh out the Battletech
Solid connection on
story. And I've just barely scratched the
Over the red
surface. I
line.
mean, that's the initial point. It's a medieval time. It's a feudal time. Technology's gone to hell, and basically, we're interested in is fighting one another. But the main BattleTech storyline begins with an upheaval, something that shakes the status quo. Um, well, it's not really a spoiler because if you begin to read the stories, that event comes out rather
internal
quickly.
damage.
But I won't spoil it for you. Basically, something really upset the status quo, and
Reporting.
the inner sphere states, those are the successor states, suddenly have to learn how to live
copy.
and fight and ally together, or a new threat will basically wipe them out.
Missed.
Yep. So that's Battletech. If you're interested in Battletech, the story, read the Michael Stackpole novels. This is an excellent PC game. I'll also put the link in the YouTube description and the release notes. I did want to say something about. So there's
Damage is
VTech.
minor, Commander.
I only played the board game for a short time, but I love the old PC games, all of them, from MechWarrior 2 onwards. MechWarrior 2, MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries, MechWarrior 3, MechWarrior 4. I didn't like Mech Commander so much. This current game, it's the closest to Mech Commander, but Mech Commander was real time. This one is turn-based, and this one really follows the rules of the old board game system, because one of the designers of this current game was the chief designer, or was the actual creator of Battletech. So the rules pretty much stick closely to what they were in the board game. So as you can see here, I'm trying to figure out what the heck, because there are basically 8 enemies and I only have 4 mechs. Oh, and I do a really stupid thing here. Okay, before I let you guys go, you notice I'm commanding an Orion, which I've custom modified to basically become a tougher catapult. That's a mech. Basically, it has long-range missiles and a couple of lasers to back it up in case people get too close. But the advantage of this Orion over the stock catapult is that the Orion is much beefier, so it can take a lot more hits. So basically, I have this Orion on a cliff top, and it's holding off an entire lance of mechs all by itself. Except, you know, I can't figure out. Do I want to put up there for damage? Okay, so now
I'm starting to cook.
the Orion has overheated because basically I alpha striked, I shot all of my weapons against one enemy mech. You'll notice here that I'm using the Orion also as a damage soak,
Internal structure
basically like a
damage.
tank. If instead of hitting my other mechs, they're hitting the Orion, because I still need to take care of these mechs in front of me. So there are 4 mechs in front of me and 4 mechs coming on the right flank. But it might be a couple of turns. Basically, I do a really dumb thing with the Orion, which I guess you can catch in the video where I talk about Battletech tactics for the PC game. So basically, I just really wanted to ramble on about Battletech. I also played the old Wizards of the Coast CCG, the card game. I had a really great deck for that. I don't think I really plays it anymore, but the CCG was fun as well.
Enemy mech. Critical damage detected.
So basically, a lot of fun times growing up with Battletech. This current PC game, I bought it at full price, which I rarely do for Steam games. I usually wait for them to go on sale. But I bought it at full price, and I even bought it ahead of time. I pre-purchased it. And again, that's something I very rarely do. So I'm super enjoying the game, and that's the reason why I haven't been publishing more videos. So before I let you guys go, basically we're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers, and if you are one of the first 1,000 to subscribe, I'll say thank you to you in every ramble, and once we hit 1,000, your names will go on a permanent credit list at the end of each video. Although, I do have to admit I'm a YouTube newbie, so I don't quite understand how I can see the list of people who've subscribed. So if you've subscribed, just let me know in the comments so I can say thank you to you properly. Okay, right now my Orion's getting hammered because it took too many hits, it lost stability, and it fell over. And again, that's something in keeping with the Battletech universe, and it's an interesting tactical option here in the PC game.
I get you. On the move.
Here, I'm getting my Thunderbolt to casually walk behind the enemy mech and blast his rear armor. As with most things, the rear armor is much thinner than the front armor, so it's usually worthwhile for you to try to maneuver into place, maneuver yourself so that you can hit the rear armor or even the side armor. Oh, and PPC just hit me. Again, my Orion is still down. And if you wanna see the really stupid thing I do with the Orion, you'll have to catch me next video, or the video I make for Battletech tactics. Alright, thanks for indulging my stroll down memory lane. Again, if you're a sci-fi fan, you could do a lot worse than getting into the Battletech universe. And if you're a turn-based tactical games fan, if you like XCOM and things like that, I do heartily encourage you to check out Battletech. Alright, till next time.